Pennsylvania yesterday. President Biden was there with Vice President Kamala Harris, rallying in Philadelphia. The event was the launch of the campaign's planned outreach, a big, enthusiastic event speaking to black voters.
Because black Americans voted, Kamala and I are President and Vice President of the United States because of you. That's not hyperbole. Because you voted, Donald Trump has defeated former president. And with your vote in 2024, we're going to make Donald Trump a loser again. Maya Angelou said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. You got it, kid. You got it. I'm showing you who I am, and Trump has shown you who he is. And today, Donald Trump is pandering and peddling lies and stereotypes for your vote so he can win for himself, not for you. Well, Donald Trump will have a message for you. Not in our house and not on our watch. And folks, the threat that Trump poses is greater in his second term than his first. It's clear that when he lost in 2020, something literally snapped in the sky. No, I'm serious. That's why January 6th happened, when he unleashed an insurrection. Now he's running again, and he's clearly unhinged. He calls insurrectionists who stormed the Capitol patriots. Patriots. If reelected, he wants to pardon, quote, every one of them. Let me ask you, what do you think he would have done on January 6th if black Americans had stormed it? Think about this. What do you think would have happened if black Americans had stormed the Capitol? I don't think he'd be talking about pardons.
If he wins a second term, I promise you he's going to go even further. So all of this is to say, who sits in the White House matters. It matters. It matters for the people of America and for people around the world.
So, Rev, this was the beginning, really, of a concerted effort by the Biden-Harris campaign to reach out to black voters. This was at Girard, a school that's predominantly black. They're talking at faith centers, churches, kind of places you spend a lot of your time. What do they need to do do what Joe's talking about, which is just to bring the Democratic base back home and convince them that they deserve another term?
They need to keep doing what they're doing now, and even more so. You know, they've done our conferences. The President Biden spoke at our National Action Network convention virally and engaged all of us. They've gone to some churches. So has the Vice President. But I also think they need to show the contrast. When you have on one side President Joe Biden standing there, as he did yesterday at Girard, with the Vice President, who was a U.S. Senator and was the Attorney General of the state of California. Contrast that with Donald Trump, who went to the Bronx for black and brown voters, with two rappers under indictment. Which black America do you want to project, they ought to say to voters. We stood and did the George Floyd Justice and Policing executive order when we couldn't get Republicans to make it law. He stood and supported, saying we don't want to have the police help any kind of reform in any way. Donald Trump did. Donald Trump was for qualified immunity, which was in the George Floyd bill. So when you contrast what each stands for, then when you have a man saying that I've been the best president for black America since Abe Lincoln, is to call us stupid. I mean, he's really insulting our intelligence. So you've been better for blacks than FDR, than John Kennedy, than Lyndon Johnson and the Great Society, than Barack Obama. I mean, you can argue what you want to argue about what you think you did, but to say you were better than them means you think we're moronic. And I think that if they keep contrasting who they are and who Trump is, and showing what they have done. They have erected unemployment among blacks is lower than it's been in 2 generations. We've seen them deliver in terms of the infrastructure. We've seen them in terms of inflation reduction, how it has disproportionately helped blacks. They have a record to run on, HBCU money. Run on your record, show your contrast, show who you're running against. And I agree with Joe. Show that this is home. Donald Trump has never been home for us. He's not even been in the neighborhood, let's known the house.
It is true, Rev. Incredibly patronizing at every turn. Remember, he said, black voters like me because I have a mugshot now.
Right.
I'm one of them. Can you imagine? He thinks that's going to resonate with black voters.
Well, the way it resonates with some black voters is we remember the mugshots that he wanted all of us to have when he wanted the death penalty for the Central Park Five. So he should never bring up mugshots and blacks in the same sentence.
So, Joe, the message was there yesterday, reaching out to black voters and just taking a look at the event itself. It was a big event. The crowd was genuinely enthusiastic. And when we talk about that contrast that the Trump campaign and his supporters try to paint Joe Biden a certain way as being old or whatever it is, again, just put up the split screen of two events. Put up that event yesterday of the President of the United States with that crowd, and then just watch the hour or 90 minutes or however long the ramblings go on of a Donald Trump event, and tell me who's losing it when you watch those.
And, you know, and the crazy thing is just
rage posting.
Just yesterday, Willie, I had somebody I know very well call me up and tell me that, and I get this call every 3 months. Such and such, who's known Joe Biden for 50 years, went into the White House, and they were shocked and they were just appalled. He's completely lost it. He's staring off into space. He's lost control of blah, blah, blah. You know, I kept hearing this before I went in and actually had lunch with him and sat and talked to him about foreign policy for close to 3 hours and thought, gee, this guy actually, you can tell he's been doing this for 50 years because he's smarter than any politician that I've talked to. We talk to people every day, and we know who can follow us and who can't follow us. And I don't think I could get 15 minutes of foreign policy from Donald Trump. But I heard that yesterday, and then I saw this speech last night, and I'm like, Republicans just... Okay, my wife's telling me to stop saying people are acting stupid.
Yeah, you need to be more validating.
I'm going to be more validating. That Republicans are blinded by their hatred of Joe Biden, and they don't understand that they're actually hurting themselves. They always do this. They set expectations so low. Will he drool during the State of the Union? Will he be able to complete, and then he knocks it out of the park? They always set expectations low. They always lie about him. Their running thing is that he's lost his mind. He's not cogent. It's not true. So when he shows up, he wins. The expectations game. That's all politics is. That's part one of it. But part two, Sam, I do need to get back to this because my better half does say I need to validate people.
It's a scary time.
Who may be panicking over Donald Trump winning because the stakes are so high. I've said the stakes are so high. I wasn't really talking that much about Democrats other than those that are sitting in cocktail parties all the time talking about how Joe Biden's going to lose. Maybe you'd want to pick up the telephone and ask how you can help instead of whining all the time. But it is a frightening time. The stakes are higher than they've ever been. And so, obviously, I do understand why people are panicking. I guess I would just ask them to actually focus on the reality that's in front of them instead of all the things that frighten them.
Yeah, I think that one of the issues here is that people not everyone recognizes the heightened stakes, right? If you look at some of these polls, we've forgotten collectively about what 2020 was like. COVID and the shutdowns and even January 6th to a degree has receded in the collective consciousness. And I think one of the hurdles that the Biden campaign has to overcome is to remind voters of that period, that the Trump presidency didn't end in 2019. And I think events like yesterday are designed to do that. That's why he held that event. That's why he evoked January 6th during the event. That's why you hear him routinely say Donald Trump snapped after he lost election. It's to remind voters of that. Ultimately, though, I think the issue here is not so much will black voters, will young voters, will Hispanic voters flock to Donald Trump? I mean, that's obviously the problem. I think the issue for Biden is, can he get them re-engaged? Can he get them enthusiastic about his candidacy? Or are they going to be lethargic and not engage in the political process? Because Joe, you and I have talked about this. Nate Cohn's analysis is right. And not only is it right, it's sort of counterintuitive. It's very rare, or has been rare, for a Democrat to do well with senior voters, 65 plus. Biden has done that. And these polls show that if you are a likely voter, if you are among the cohort that traditionally does go out and vote, you're maybe inclined to vote for Joe Biden over Donald Trump. That is rare. It's usually Democrats who need to engage the less active, the more passive voting crowd. Now Biden's hurdle is, can he get those traditional Democratic constituencies not to shift from Trump back to him, but to engage them in the political process? And I think he's just being bogged down by a lot of issues. One of them is his own reluctance to be a public communicator. He's going to step that up, obviously, as the campaign progresses. But two is obviously inflation and the war, frankly, when it comes to young voters.